I like to each Wednesday at this time to sort of have a different style interview. Somebody involved in the news, behind the news, has been in the news, in the studio with me. Former Essendon captain, Jobe Watson. Good morning.
Morning, Neil.
You ever go to the footy?
I went to the Dreamtime game, actually, a couple of weeks ago. Left at three-quarter time because the Bombers weren't going too well, but that was my first game for the year.
Do you enjoy it?
I don't mind watching. I try and watch Essendon on the TV, but that would be the only game that I would see.
So the reason I ask, you've been around it all your life. I see that lovely footage of you running around the rooms as, a 3-year-old or something, and then running around the field as captain. Do you miss it?
I don't miss playing anymore.
Anymore? You did initially?
Yeah, I think I was relieved that to finish up. There's parts of it I miss. I miss the camaraderie. I miss the teammanship and that element of it. But I don't miss playing anymore. I think that I got to the stage where I couldn't do what I used to be able to do, and it was time to walk away.
Do you exercise still? You run and do?
Yeah, I do like exercising. I think it's really important, especially for ex-athletes, to continue to exercise. So I really do enjoy that. It's part of, I guess, my routine of well-being.
The thing that's always intrigued me, and I think it was your dad, Tim, who made this point when you won the Brownlow, that you had been a good player, going along, as a good player, and hadn't taken the next step to being a really, really good player, top player. And he'd had a talk with you and said, come on, mate, get your act together. And that intrigues me because of what happened with you, and you went on to new heights, but also what you learn from that as a father and what you learn from that, what we can learn from that dealing with kids. If you've got the early 20s, mid-20s even, a young man or young woman who's just coasting through life and it's all pretty good and you can go to the pub and how do you get that focus? What did Tim do, or what made you throw that switch?
Well, I guess it comes back to the relationship that you have with your parents, and when you have that strong relationship, then they know the triggers to or the levers to pull that will motivate you. And really, Dad gave me some really strong feedback about about how I was going, and he said, "Listen, you don't have to keep playing. It's not something that my dad and mum, they didn't care that I played footy or not. But what you were doing right now was you were actually doing yourself a disservice, and it had nothing to do with either of us, but it had to do with you, and you weren't giving yourself the best opportunity to be successful. And so as a 20-year-old, I went away and sulked for a few days, and then came back to him and said, well, if you were in my position, what would you do? And that was the impetus to changing how my career was going.
Could that have been a turning point? You might have sulked and said, yeah, I'm out of here, I quit?
Well, I guess so, yeah, and probably, and that's a risk when you get strong feedback. But I think that Dad, based off the relationship that we had, he probably knew that what my reaction would be, and that I had pride and that I wanted to be successful in it, and he probably pushed the right lever, I guess.
Did he call you a slacker?
No, he didn't call me a slacker. Just said, you're embarrassing yourself.
I suppose it's helped in that situation because you would have had, clearly, as we all did, enormous respect for him as a player. So, even though you grew up with him, you would have said, okay, here I've got a bloke who really made it as a player, telling me how to handle it as a player.
Yeah, and I think that it was, like it's a father-son relationship. So obviously Dad had a really successful career, but I always, went to him for advice, as most children do to their parents, and you don't necessarily always like to hear what they've got to say. But I think that I was, I went away and mulled over it and came back and, took down the path that I ended up going. But I guess it is formed off that strength of a relationship.
Tough thing to do, though, because I think we all, and you're a dad, you get so fragile about the kids, about your daughter. How old, 8 months?
8 months, yeah. Juniper.
You get a bit fragile, don't you?
You do. It softens you right up, doesn't it?
And to think that your instinct is to protect the child and to help and to sort of boost the child and boost their confidence and everything. And here's your dad saying, bang.
Well, I guess Dad, Dad knew what the industry and I guess to a degree what life is like. Football is a good reflection, I think, in some elements of what life is like. It's tough, it's brutal, it's competitive, and if you want to make it, you have to devote everything you have to it. And I think that he saw that, and he saw that perhaps I had more to give, and I guess he was right.
Can you see yourself sitting down with your 20-year-old daughter and saying, "Now, come on, get your act together"?
Isn't that what every parent has to do at some stage?
I don't know. I don't think I did. It's a big call. You still got your energy. I mean, the energy it requires to be an elite footballer is extraordinary.
Yeah, I think so. I don't have the energy to be an elite athlete anymore, but I suppose the thing that I enjoy most is learning new things and educating myself, and I have the energy for discovery, and that's what I've been able to do since football finished, and discover new industries and learn and educate myself on I guess the other parts of life that I probably neglected when I was playing because I was so focused on football.
Well, I assume when you grew up, all you ever wanted to be was a footballer?
Yeah, that's right. It was my dream since I was a little kid. So, anyone that is able to live out their dream is in an incredibly fortunate position, So
But did you ever have any thought what happens after?
I didn't probably think a lot about that until I started to get older in my career, and I look back now and the time that we had and towards the end of my career and what that looked like, and I look at that 12 months off, and it was actually there was a really silver lining in that 12 months because of the experiences that I was able to get and the way in which it prepared me for life after football.
And what did you do? You went to New York in the coffee shop.
Yeah, I did. I moved to New York and I suppose lived a completely different life to the one that I had, and had an array of different experiences that were really beneficial for my growth, and I guess I started to ask myself questions that I hadn't asked as I was playing football.
How did the coffee shop? Is it still? You still got it? It's still going?
Yeah, still got it. So hole in the wall. We've got one down in Cliff Street, and we've just opened another one at the American Copper Building, which looks out over the East River, back over to Brooklyn. So,
if you make it in New York, make it anywhere. Ask Frank Sinatra. What did you do? What is special about your coffee shop, about your shops, your cafes?
Well, I think it's about taking a bit of Melbourne over there, and often we take from America and bring it back over here, and I think that what we have here in our food culture and our coffee culture is actually a superior product that what they have over in America. So it's about taking what we have here, what our expectations are, and giving it to the American people.
So do you give them good coffee? Because they wouldn't know it.
Well, no, we're starting to educate them on what good coffee is. And funnily enough, if you go over there and you talk to someone who lives in New York and you say an Australian cafe, then they have the association now of quality. And which has been, I guess, a wonderful education part of what Melbourne and Australians can bring to the rest of the world.
You give them smash dab with
a poached egg and
bit of feta.
We have a homemade Tim Tams actually that we make, so a really Australian menu.
How's the smash dab go down?
Yeah, no, they love it. They really do.
It's not deep fried.
No, we had a superior product over here. That because I guess we had such quality produce and the style in which we like to eat, and we've been able to give that to the rest of the world.
Any businesses here?
Yeah, we've got. I've got a property business, so Infolio Property Advisors. So that I guess the two industries that I've gone into are very much Melbourne, so property and coffee. But Infolio Property Advisors, we act as buyer advocates and also property management here in Melbourne.
Gee, that's a tough industry though.
Yeah, it's been great to educate myself in it. I started doing it one day a week when I was still playing, and then I moved into it post football. So it's a tough industry, but it's also there's some great people in there, and there's a lot of knowledge, and I'm learning a lot, and I'm really enjoying it.
You don't turn up and bid for people, do you?
Yeah.
You can't because I'll know who you are.
That doesn't matter.
I don't know. Oh, well, look out. Yeah, well, I suppose you're right. I mean, everybody knows the buyer's advocate if they're going to bid on just at an auction, don't they?
That's right. Yeah. So it's about negotiating is part of it, but it's also sourcing. And
I loved reading of some more advice you got from your parents on buying your first house. Hey, in Albert Park, right?
Yeah.
and then you sold it at a loss.
I did. Yeah.
Nobody loses money on a house in Albert Park.
I think I had 3 mates from school who I moved in as tenants, and I think they were solely responsible for the depreciation.
But Tim and your mum said buy it, and then you sold it, and
Yeah,
you paid too much, obviously.
Well, that's what I asked Dad how much I should pay, and he gave me the advice. So the next time I learnt my lesson and went and got a professional to help me out.
Do we help current players enough to prepare for the future?
I think it's...
Or do we have a responsibility to for that matter?
Yeah, it's interesting that I think the players, and I learnt this, and I think it was being away from the game for 12 months, is that I never really asked myself the question about who am I or what do I like when I was playing. I was so focused on football, and football was always what I knew and what I loved. And that idea of self-discovery never really, that most people go through when they're in their 20s and things like that, wasn't something that I had opened myself up to. And so I give sort of the advice to players that I've spoken to now is that if they can, I would give myself some time after the game to go and ask those questions and who am I? What is it that I really love? If it's 6 months, if it's 12 months, whatever the time that they can allow themselves to do that and go on a bit of a self-discovery to actually work out what is it that I'm really passionate about. And if they can find the answer to that, then generally I think that for their well-being and for their future, if you can find something that you're passionate about, it would lead you in a much more positive path than making decisions out of fear.
Yeah. Look, despite the league decision, I consider you a Brownlow medalist and one of the really good players over recent years. I've known a lot of good players. I've known some ordinary players, or ordinary, nobody's ordinary if they played league footy, but not great players over the years. Some get big heads, some don't. How do you avoid, in this town, you're walking down the street, there's Jobe Watson, or, he played well. How do you avoid getting a big head?
I have a very stern mother.
I've heard that. Tim told me that.
No, I think I like anyone, I use the examples of my parents, and Dad has never been someone who I suppose has wanted the limelight. Funnily enough, he's worked in media, since most of his adult life. But
I remember giving him advice not to make a comeback. That was real wise, wasn't it? When he worked here. No, don't go back. Don't win a premiership.
But I think that I've always had a great example of how to behave and what they've done, and I think that. Trying to not associate my identity as a player, because there's a finite period of time, and if you associate that always, then it's always going to end, and you're going to be disappointed about it. So I think it's about developing who you are and improving.
I don't want to go into the detail of what happened, but how bruised were you?
Well, I learnt a lot about resilience, and and it taught me some really valuable lessons about life and what I was capable of, and I always learnt, and I learnt that you should avoid going to lawyers at all costs, because no one wins when you get down that path.
Heroes, business heroes.
Yeah, I've had an opportunity to speak to some really interesting people, and I've also had great examples of close friends who were players who were older than me, that moved on from football, and how they are able to manage their life and that transition. And I'm thankful that I've been able to have those sort of relationships with guys who've set really good examples for me to look at and to be guided by. And
still friends in footy?
Yeah, still close friends in football, and the relationships that you have and those that you build are really wonderful. And there's some fantastic people in football clubs.
James Hird, friend?
Yeah, I haven't spoken to Hirdy a lot since we finished, and
it's good to see him coming good though. I was really
worried
about him.
Yeah, it is. I think that you look at some of the results of what happened to some of those people, and there's a lot of sadness associated with the negative effects that it had on people's lives.
Your daughter's name?
Juniper, yeah.
Juniper Hendricks?
Juniper Hendricks, yeah. So we loved the name Hendricks. We had a bottle of gin at home, and we loved the name Hendricks. And then obviously gin is made from juniper berries, and we loved the association. And then my my partner is actually, she's Dutch, so the Dutch invented gin. So there's a connection to that as well.
What are you going to tell her when she grows up?
It'll be difficult to tell her that drinking's not a good idea, isn't it?
What did your mum say about Juniper Hendricks?
No, she loved it, actually.
Good. I think it's a lovely name, but
Yeah.
it's different. It's a different one. The name of your business again?
Infolio Property Advisors. So we're just based in South Melbourne.
When are you going back to New York?
I'll get over there in September, I think. It's starting to get really hot and humid there at the moment. September starts to get a bit nicer.
Well, like me, you won't have other commitments in September.
I don't know if the Bombers will be there either.
Good to see you. Good to talk to you. All the best. I really wish you well. Lovely.
Thank you very much, Neil. Cheers.
In the studio, Jobe Watson.